we're into a really exciting debate there. We're into a really exciting debate. We need to target the pipelines and blow them up. Kill the rich.
She's coming.
Just while people are being seated, a reminder that if you're interested in getting involved in community television in Dublin, in Cork and Belfast,
good to see my fashion sense going back from the 1980s to the 1970s.
We're DCTV, we're info@dctv.ie, the website dctv.ie, and we'll be more than happy to explore how we can help you get your message out.
I'm actually not that young as well.
Say again? Hi, how you doing? I'd known you were carrying this.
No. Oh, God. Oh, because I should have texted you. 100%. 30-year-old waters. As in you attack factors, like 5 a.m. to 12 o'clock at night days as well. So, do you want some water?
See ya. Good to see you again. Oh.
I know. Well, yeah, a couple of months ago. In the meantime, we've been trying to get through our legal and accounts bit. So it's just taking ages. So this just there's plenty of drawings. So Anthony's already invoiced us. I talked to Belinda, so she's taking this screen. So hopefully we can get done in the next 2 or 3 weeks. It's not going to drive me into 20.
Okay, we get started. Yeah. Welcome to the panel guests. As John said, my name is Olivia Freeman. So I've been working in TU Dublin for a long time. I was based in the Faculty of Business, lecturing in the areas of communications and consumer culture, consumption studies, and in the last couple of years I've moved into the area of sustainability education, and right now I'm working with Grangegorman, who is heading up the sustainability education team here in TU Dublin. And our aim is to support faculties to embed sustainability into the curriculum, which is what Kevin Hora was mentioning a little while ago. So that's me. I'd like to welcome Trish Canning, Alex De Valera, Pat Burton and Kieran O'Carroll. And rather than sort of go through introductions, maybe as each of you address the question, you might share a little bit about your background and what you bring. So the question that I've been provided is really just one question, so it's a very easy job for me now. I'm going to ask the question and then I'm going to keep time and hear your thoughts. But it's around greening production and thinking about how to reduce the carbon footprint of production. And you obviously all have experience around this and might be able to point people here as well to some examples around best practice in this area. And maybe we'll start with Alex, because I know that this is a huge area of expertise for you and probably lots of people are coming to you looking for that expertise at the moment. So do you want to share with the room, I suppose, some of your thoughts around this?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, greening production's kind of my bread and butter, 24/7. Got into it about, let's say, 4 or 5 years ago now. So I was always a big sustainability head in school. I was my member of the Green Committee, and then in college as well. And then my part-time job in college too, I actually introduced their first sustainability measures. And then from that, I got a call one day being like, oh, I know you're interested in working in film, any chance you're free? And that was the end, or the beginning of the end. So yeah, that's how I started working in film. And my first day on set, couldn't sleep that night because of the amount of waste I saw. And I made a decision to myself, and some people know the story, that I was like, okay, if I'm going to continue working in this industry, I'm going to have to do work to improve the environment behind the scenes so that we're having an overarching positive impact, because ultimately that's what we want to achieve with our audience. So yeah, that was the beginning, and then what ensued was a lot of carbon reporting, a lot of policy development, a lot of positive engagement with like-minded producers in the beginning who were critical voices, to be honest with you, with the movement. In film, it was very actually much grassroots initially, so it was actually crew members starting their own initiatives on individual productions. So from the top of my mind, there was Vikings, and they built a well to get fresh drinking water. They were also the first production to have a 3-bin system, and that came from an idea of a location assistant on the job who then started his own company and then offered 3-bin systems to the whole film industry as well as events. So I think, so in film, it was very grassroots in the beginning. And then we kind of started going, okay, well, how do we know we're doing the right thing? So we started being a little bit more strategic, started very much using the Albert calculator on productions, which is a carbon calculator. Then production started aiming for certification. And then the likes of myself came along and were like, okay, let's, instead of, the primary focus being on recycling, let's kind of look at like travel, energy, and other areas that would reduce emissions even further, and were actually the largest proportion of production's carbon footprint. So that kind of ensued for about 2 years, and now we're very much at kind of capacity building across the sector, with different departments, seeing a huge engagement, especially from young people, straight out of college, wanting to learn more about what they can do within their own role, which is really positive, because before it was just, a producer and a sustainability officer being interested. Now I find that it's, I'm seeing a great level of integration in departments, which is brilliant, and just, seeing sustainability as just a part of the job now, which is fantastic and what we want to see. And then a high level of innovation from key leaders in the industry. The definition of a producer is a creative entrepreneur, and I really believe that from what I've seen so far, I have countless stories of producers really taking the leap forward and being an example for their productions, for their crew, having tough conversations with funding bodies, and being like, this is how I want to produce my film, this is how I sleep at night. So I think, in terms of best practice, definitely top level, but it's all about engagement and having a strategic plan that works. So that's kind of a little overview of the last few years in film and the work that's been done. But yeah, really positive.
Sounds like a lot of change in a short time.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah, and something, in a weird way, COVID kind of helped us, I feel, because the crew were used to seeing policy and abiding by something for a higher purpose and a collective purpose. And I think, well, I used it to my advantage. I just started adding a sustainability policy into contracts, so that crew were like pledging that they would abide by certain protocols on set to reduce emissions. So that did help.
I have heard that kind of COVID officer role morphed into
sustainability. Definitely. I learned a lot from that period, actually. Very much so.
Would you like to come in, Trish, and speak about it from your perspective?
Yeah, my perspective, I would have worked on documentaries, factual programs more than dramas, and one of my views is that the lower the budget, the more environmentally friendly a program is. So when you're looking at something like community TV or a film like we saw earlier, there is a very low carbon footprint, but the more expensive you go tends to be busier, more high end, and therefore more waste. So bit like Alex said, I've been on sets where people are just automatically given bottles of water, automatically provided with coffee and whatever disposable cups. Certainly a few years ago, those were the norm. And the higher up the budget level you go, and the more
because film and TV is very hierarchical. It's very, you know, whatever person at the top wants, whether it's the director or a high-end actor or TV presenter, that's what they get. So making changes in that can be really difficult. I'm working for Commission Amman now, but I was a producer with a company called Loose Horse for the past few years, and I produced the Mary Robinson documentary that was in the film cinema till a couple of weeks ago. Second most successful documentary since 2020. But one of the things on that we did, we didn't think about sustainability in the beginning because it just took so long to get off the ground, and you're kind of pitching it and selling it and developing it. So we did a bit of filming ourselves, you know, just interviews with Mary that we paid for ourselves. And then when we got some money, then we're kind of going, okay, let's, you know, Mary's very, you know, involved in climate change and climate actions at an international level, and here we are, we're going to hop on planes and follow her around the world. So we did kind of think about that, and while always thinking of the film first, and you know, we wanted a film in New York, and we went to New York, had 4 people sent on a crew to New York, which is expensive and not very environmentally friendly. But we did, I think what we can do is small changes. So the second time we sent a crew, we were like, do we need 4 people to go? You know, we are going to go to Africa with her. That's important. That's how we tell her story the way we want to. But 3 people went, and we hired a sound man locally. So it's not massive, but it to me, they're the kind of things that we can do that make a difference. And the same, you know, another time we did an interview with somebody in the States, and we just hired a cameraman there, and the director got on Zoom. This is where technology can be so useful. Did the interview with the person, you know, in a hotel room in Boston, with a cameraman there, set up all the shots. It was all done remotely, and obviously that's much more cost effective and environmentally friendly than flying over. So it is about changing things so that these things become more standard. I mean, one of the things in Commission Amman, we say that if sustainability becomes more like health and safety, you wouldn't dream of doing a shoot with a drone or on a boat or without a whole risk assessment and, you know, health and safety considerations. Now, and I think over the past 4 or 5 years, it's only that really in Ireland, maybe a little bit more, that you would look and go, okay, you might not have a sustainability advisor like Alex on set or on the production, but somebody's there to go, okay, the producer has to do sustainability the same way they have to do health and safety. So it's becoming more and more a norm to at least start considering what our environmental impact is.
Well, congratulations on the film. I absolutely loved it. I have to say, I went to it and I didn't for one second actually think about the carbon footprint of the production, because I was so caught up in the messaging. And from the get-go, it was climate, and then I was wondering, was it going to come full circle, and it did towards the end, and I'm sure it was a balancing act, because you could make an entire film just about that aspect of Mary Robinson's contribution. And at one stage, you could make an entire film about the 1990 election.
Yes. You know, you do, like, that's what producers do at the beginning. You go, and at one stage we had a cut of the film with no documentary scenes like actuality in it, where it was pure archive. And like the Sinead O'Connor film is pure archive film. There's no location shoots, so the environmental footprint is smaller. But you know, we felt with Mary, we wanted to show her she's an 80-year-old woman who is still having impact around the world, and we felt to do that you need to get on the plane with her and go. And that when we did look at the archive version only, it's good. It's, you know, she probably wouldn't be making a feature film about her if she wasn't the first female president of Ireland, but it missed something. You wanted to go, this is what she's still doing. She will keep doing it until she drops, you know. So we felt it was essential.
Absolutely. Pat, Kieran, I don't mind who wants to come in next. Pat.
Go, Pat.
Okay, my name is Pat Brereton. I'm a director of the Green Foundation Ireland, a newbie in that job. I'm a retired emeritus professor of DCU. We have a climate change masters. I want to congratulate TU Dublin because I think they're doing a great initiative. All universities need to follow about sustainability, crossing all sort of areas. Just referencing the last session, I would highly recommend for young people, very young people. We did an analysis of an African American singer called Prince Ia, and he did a YouTube video. I know you all hate YouTube, but it's a video called Sorry, and it got millions and millions of views, and it's a really good engagement. So I think there's ways across the wide ecology of media, not just community radio, right up into mainstream. We need to find ways of making connections and not demonize different audiences. It's finding ways to make the connections is really important. My area of research is, I'm an academic. My PhD was on how environmental media could be effective. So as was mentioned at the earlier time, how can we get stories across that are not just preachy, because the environmental issue and the biodiversity issue is in danger of being very preachy, and that really pisses people off. So how do you make it more engaging and provocative? And I think that's a real challenge, and I think this is where we're all trying to look at different ways how we can connect with young people is something that's really important. From a climate perspective, I helped set up with the good old great John Gorman green screening, where we brought the Albert calculator from the UK to make it mandatory. We wanted it mandatory for all media across Ireland, all the mainstream media. So we got everyone in the room, from RTE to TG4 to Virgin to all the funders, and we sort of got it going. We sort of started off, and now we're sort of pivoting and giving it over to Commission Le Mans, who is going to take it over, and they're going to mainstream and road test it and make it part of the normal. So sustainability shouldn't be abnormal. It needs to be normal, and that's part of its problem, I would say. As I said at the start, I'm particularly interested in mind mapping, in mind trying to get the environmental message across different media and in different ways, telling the stories through community television as well as into Hollywood blockbusters, from Avatar to all the sort of great films that some of you will know that are what we call eco-cinema, and sort of getting that message across and trying to make it more provocative. As John keeps telling me, the climate emergency is an alarm. An alarm is a loud sound that scares people or whatever. So how do we get the balance between making an alarm, which it is, and it is scary, but yet getting people to actually do stuff? The psychologists will keep saying that attitudinal behaviour, attitudinal change is okay. It's easy to get, we're all climate change, we embrace climate change, but we don't behave right. Okay, we don't make that sort of big transformational change. And I think the media can and should have a major role in helping this. And from today, I think that community television has a very big role, because it's so micro budget and it's so driven by an agenda. It can be really effective, and it should be making more links with education and more links with all sorts of communities, and should become a bigger, it's not another word we use in climate change, it should have a bigger footprint to actually connect with very different areas and become part of the bigger ecology, and not just leave it to the RTEs and the TG4s and whatever. So it needs to be part of the Irish sort of thing. So I think that could be a very important strategy into the future for dealing with the climate emergency. Thank you. End of speech.
Just on the Albert calculator, can you say, I see that at the end of TV programming, it doesn't come up at the end of the credits?
Yeah, there's a danger, some would argue it could be a form of greenwashing. Right. Because all media now wants to be seen as green. So there's a danger that it could be, but it has to go through a rigorous process, isn't that right, John? Of trying to get the Albert. So it's.
What does it exactly mean?
It measures.
If you have that at the end of your program.
You can know more about it.
What does it
measure? So it's measuring all the footprint. What carbon has been used.
The certification process is separate to the carbon footprinting aspect of the production deliverable of Albert. It's basically supplying evidence that the production has actually carried out what they committed to in pre-production. So it'd be like, say, for example, you know, does the production have a zero waste to landfill policy on location? You would supply the waste management company's sustainability policy to Albert, as an example. You can be asked up to 17, and sometimes it's not as simple as one invoice to evidence. But yeah, so it's a lengthy process for sure. But yeah.
It does beg the question that, you know, a media product can't preach environmental issues if it's not putting its own house in order.
100%,
So
yeah.
it needs to have it both and rather than either or. So that's a big issue.
And for people that are producing advertisements, are they also...
There's an organisation called Purpose Disruptors
I'm
who
familiar
are
with them,
really,
yeah.
really good, I would argue. So I would see Purpose Disruptors. Now, advertising is often seen as the handmaiden of capitalism. It's all about increasing consumption and increasing, which it is. But can the skills that advertisers and PR and marketing people have, can they be repurposed for the betterment of society?
Could I jump
think
in
they
there?
can. Yeah.
I would actually say the engagement in Ireland, especially in advertising from especially commercial producers, Ireland has been outstanding. They've been global leaders in sustainable production in advertising, especially with the Ag Green calculator. There isn't a certification process, just because to undergo a certification process over a 2-day shoot is very challenging. However, I think that's also offered a lot of flexibility for producers to approach their sustainability plans according to the needs and necessities of their projects, rather than it being a black and white model. So yeah, I think advertising, we've done fantastic work. Like there was the AIB ad about sustainability. They engaged a sustainability consultant, myself, like a month in at the start of pre-production to consult on every aspect, which was just really like absolutely amazing to be a part of. So yeah, I'm very inspired by the producers in Ireland advertising, and so many of them have been great leaders that have also helped push things in film as well, like Max Brady, Bodacious now, formerly Pull the Trigger, is doing fantastic work. She's also a member of Global Production Network and is their sustainability lead in the organisation for other production service companies. So yeah, doing great work for advertising for sure.
Interesting to hear that. Thank you. Thanks a million. So Kieran, we haven't heard from you yet, and obviously you're bringing a range of...
I'm just enjoying myself.
a range of lots of different areas of expertise that I think you can draw on. So I suppose what comes to mind for you when you're thinking about production and carbon footprint of production?
Well, I'm a lecturer here at TU Dublin in the Faculty of Business, also member of the Board of Screen Ireland and of the National Gallery of Ireland. So with regard to, I'll put my Screen Ireland hat on for a moment and just talk about our sustainability initiatives for a second. So for the last 2 years, we've been running a pilot, Sustainability Innovation Fund pilot, that allows people to apply. Covers the cost of sustainability initiatives under 4 different banners: carbon reduction, I'm going to struggle to remember them all now, carbon reduction, food, biodiversity, and rewilding. That's pretty much it, right? And also allows to help cover the cost of people like Alex as sustainability advisors. Just to, I think it's just worth noting that, you know, one of the ways that can really help community is particularly under nature restoration and rewilding. One of the criteria is that you can use those funds to help community with rewilding projects. So if you're filming in a certain location, and if you can interact with local groups, I mean, you've obviously been talking about them, like Daughter Watch, for example, that already have initiatives that they're working on. They need a little bit of extra funding, that kind of collaboration and partnership, and you can tap into the Screen Ireland Sustainability Innovation Fund, put in an application, and help get funding for those initiatives that help leave a sustainability mark in a location well past filming and well past production, which is what we need. So that's currently a pilot. We're coming to the end of that pilot, and hopefully it's going to last a lot longer, of course. And the more people that ask, the more people come to bodies like us. Here's a little insider tip for funding bodies like Screen Ireland: the more people come and make noise about "I want," on sustainability, the more it helps people like me at board level. You know, in those discussions, you know, this is Ireland. The more we say, hey, Jimmy wants this, and this is really important and really helpful, it really actually does make an impact. You know, just to say. So we've had the Sustainability Innovation Fund for 2 years. We have sustainability advisors like Alex. We also have sustainability screen standards that have been brought in. This is all pretty much post COVID. You know, and at the end of the day, it's about doing the right thing, absolutely. But it's also about competitiveness. You know, and I think, you know, sometimes, not all the time, but that, you know, that gets lost a bit. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, we don't film in a vacuum in Ireland. You know, we have competitors. The UK is a big one. Europe is another. They're competitors and they're collaborators, right? And in Europe, the sustainability standards in some countries can be higher than in Ireland, or they have to reach certain sustainability standards in order to get the tax incentives in their countries. That means, to simplify a little bit, but if we're doing a co-production with them, we also have to meet those standards for them to get the tax cut. So the point is that just even from a competitiveness point of view, above and beyond doing the right thing, it's vitally important that we are maintaining, if not exceeding, those sustainability standards so that we can continue to be, you know, one of the leaders in film production, you know. And as from a Screen Ireland perspective, things like the Sustainability Innovation Fund pilot, you know, what we really need, like we need all over our economy, is scale. You know, we have so many fantastic solutions like say battery packs, you know, or battery generators that don't make the noise, they're cleaner, they're less air pollution. But because they're not at scale at the moment, they're more expensive. There's a green premium, HVO, you know, kind of etc. Right? Which, by the way, is mandatory in Northern Ireland. You know, so you know that's a huge point. You know, again on the competitiveness, that we need to be able to scale up so that everyone can tap into these more sustainable resources just as a norm, right? And so that is one of kind of the stated goals of the fund. We need to get to that level whereby we have economies of scale for sustainable production in Ireland for these technologies that just benefit everyone. And we need to get to that as fast as possible from a competitive perspective, just to keep up. And I'll pause there, or else I'll just keep going.
Does anybody want to come back in on any of that?
I think sustainability as a business strategy needs to be a little bit more welcomed in our industry, but also nationally. I think forging partnerships where, say, for example, the public sector might be a bit slow to achieve results and reach milestones that we need to be reaching to meet our targets, I think should be supported. So initiatives like the Sustainability Innovation Fund, which provides an avenue for suppliers to upgrade equipment, also engage in like outreach activities. I'm on a job at the moment and we're hoping to do some work with Rewild Wicklow as part of a crew engagement activity, because obviously biodiversity in film is something that's very important, especially in the locations department. So by engaging in an activity like that would be funded through the Innovation Fund, we would hope to create more awareness and appreciation for, you know, our impact on the actual location we're in, not just emissions that we don't see popping and pumping out of a generator, you know. So yeah, I think initiatives like that, and you know, see more companies partnering with charities and doing outreach activities with their employees. I think that's a fantastic way to foster positive and community engagement, and also our communities are looking different in modern Ireland as well. So I think being adaptable to changing times and different ways of communication and engagement really need to be planned out, and being strategic as well, and being smart about it. Obviously it looks good for a company to partner with a charity, and if it reduces emissions, I'm happy about that. Do you know what I mean? So I think, you know, exploring opportunities, being creative, innovative, I think that's the kind of realm we need to explore more, to see more good work being done, you know. I'll stop talking now too, because I'll go on.
I'm just thinking about something that you said, Trish, in terms of, you know, I suppose those kind of decisions that you have to make. You know, you're sort of balancing up the carbon footprint around the quality of the production that you know, people are going to see. I'm just wondering, like, what are your thoughts on maybe some of the challenges around this? Around, you know, what are the bigger challenges around this greening
Yeah.
of productions?
I think it's about making it bigger scale and faster, because the most sustainable way of making a film is not to make it. I mean, this is the dilemma of the bigger the industry grows, and both me and Commissioner Mann and Kieran in Screen Ireland, our function is to have an industry, to grow an industry. We're competing against the UK on our tax incentives and things. So how we balance that, keeping an industry where people are working and we're making things, and being sustainable. I mean, I'm choosing to be optimistic, that things like HVO fuel and technology is going to help us and get us out of the climate disaster we're facing. But it is very tricky, and ultimately you kind of go on with your job and you're going, how can I make the best documentary I can? And if that is a couple of people flying to New York, we will have the couple of people fly to New York, and it will be a better film than if it's pure archive. So it's a real difficult dilemma that we deal with all the time, and the amount of that we can save by sustainable practices or using Albert is 10%, maybe 20% if you're really lucky, on the kind of projects I would have dealt with. And it's a real difficulty of, when you look at, because you do start to go, well, it's nearly irrelevant, why bother, at all. So
I think it's BBC had issues up to fairly recently where they didn't want the news programmes having the carbon calculator, because they said news should be not censored by the cost of sending people to sort of very expensive places, because the news is the news is the news. So it's public service broadcasting versus that. There's also an issue that the Attenborough, who we mentioned earlier, they're the most expensive carbon calculated documentaries, and they're about climate change, or they're trying to promote. So there's a paradox there of how the cost versus saving on the carbon calculator. So I think there's a difficult issues and difficult sort of issues to be made on that. And the thing I mentioned earlier about this YouTube video was made for very little money, but it was hugely popular. So how do you get are eyeballs important? As we said earlier, we community television isn't interested in eyeball or clickbait, but legacy media certainly is. It has to. So how does it play that balance? How does it get audiences versus how do you get that sort of balance right? It's a real issue.
Yeah, and it's a constant issue, especially, and the media is changing so much. Like public service media isn't necessarily on your TV box; it's on YouTube and TikTok and everywhere else. We can get people. So I think it's a daily challenge, no more than for any of us thinking about when we're going on holidays. And Mary Robinson is particularly interesting. She obviously considers she flies a lot. It's her impact, and she said she got rid of her car, and she's like, okay, if I don't have a car, helps her justify flying. So we all but it's particularly interesting for the screen for a producer, because I think sustainability for a producer or director is never going to be the number one thing they're thinking about. It needs to be on the list, it needs to be in the top 10, probably in the top 3, but it's not going to be the number one thing, and that's the way TV
reality
producers is the reality.
I think in our current paradigm of, as you say, our mission is to grow the industry, and that's the paradigm of our economic system is growth, right? And I think as long as we're stuck in this paradigm, which we desperately need to change, the fastest way to get changes in an industry is for it to be the most cost-effective option, and for that we need the economies of scale on everything from from the batteries to the LED lighting, so you guys will know more than me, to the generators, to the fuel, whatever that might be, and so it actually also becomes the most economical. And for that we need radical collaboration between different producers, different groups, different countries, all coming together and say, we're all going to have a level playing field here, because we're all going to maximize economies of scale. And that radical collaboration is, in our current paradigm, what I see is kind of like the best thing we could be doing right now, until, as a wider society, we bring that change around that we require.
Yeah.
do these calculators include things like dietary, what sort of foods you're serving?
Yeah, catering, yeah.
Beef is very high up there.
Yeah,
No
I've done
beef
the
casseroles. But I'm still surprised, you know, when you remember ordering some vegetarian. The last job I was on, and we had X amount of vegetarians, and we ordered X. You know, we said, make some vegetarian food, and they only brought enough vegetarian food for the people
who were vegetarian.
Oh, yeah, and all the other stuff was with meat, and I was like, well, that's kind of wrong, because meat eaters eat vegetarian food, but it doesn't go the other way around. And I was always like, no, I said, we've got to be at least 50% vegetarians, because I'm not vegetarian, but I will favour vegetarian food a lot of the time. But
vegetarian food looks really good. You find it
and when it's good, completely.
Oh, you tell me that it's a nightmare for production when that happens, because then it's like all the dietary. You're like the gluten free or the celiac person comes up, and you're like, oh yeah, your meal's gone because someone decided they're
better.
But
than
the lesson
casserole.
here is that when you're dealing with crowds of people, it's very difficult for a producer. Do you know what I mean? I think it's not, the importance of a plan that's meaningful to actually reduce emissions, and something that's planned so early on is like of paramount importance, because otherwise you run into these situations on the ground where you're like, oh God, we actually only ordered enough vegetarian meals for vegetarians. Since everyone decided that they're vegetarian, the vegetarians have no meals. Then we have to go and get a Deliveroo now, and more emissions. Disaster. So it's like, like for example, some of the measures that I've done on previous jobs with catering are obviously food donations, and then talking to caterers about innovative ways to reduce the meat content of meat meals. So for example, instead of it being like a pork chop, you could have bacon and cabbage as a meal option. So it's just reducing it. And again, no one likes when they're told, actually, you're not allowed to eat this. Sorry, you're vegan for the whole shoot now. No one likes being told that. No one likes to make Hobson's choice. Give people enough information to make an informed decision. So another thing we did was actually put the emission count per meal, like the way in some restaurants you see calories. We said, just so you know, this is the most emissions in this meal, so go ahead, pick that one in front of everybody. But you know what I mean? That I think it's not so black and white. It really isn't when you're dealing with it, like especially a group of people, and catering in film. In particular, is one of the things, if other things are going wrong in the film or on a job, catering gets attacked. Oh, the food is so bad today, and so with getting that right and sustainability being seen very positively there, I have found from experience, makes everything else kind of grow out organically almost. That they're like, wow, did you try that vegan meal? That was amazing. Oh, did you hear about the HVO? And it becomes part of the daily conversation. But yeah, the importance of a plan.
Yeah, because I think one of the things with where Albert is so useful, and that Albert doesn't change a lot, but it makes people think about it early.
Yes.
And I think that's it. But you've got to think about it early. There's no point thinking halfway through a shoot, whether it's a 2-year-long documentary or a 6-week drama shoot. If you're halfway through, the train's gone. You can't go, all right, let's change the caterers or something. That's a disaster. And when things become pressurized, you tend to throw money at things and go, solve the problem, and climate change and sustainability goes out the window. So with things like Albert and planning, you think about it early, and you actually go, well, do you need that many flights? And maybe if we're going to go to Africa, we do 2 countries, we do as much as you can there, and little ideas like that with the catering. And I think that's, just small things making a difference. You have to think that the small things making a difference, so that when things do get difficult, it isn't like, let's throw the money at it.
And I think that absolutely goes for every single production. The earlier you bring sustainability in, the absolute better. And I think, just to bring it up to a macro industry level as well, with my Screen Ireland hat on, it goes with how we look at where the Irish film industry is going over the next decade, and plus, because it's the decisions we make here kind of now in 2024 that's going to impact the Irish film industry for 10, 20, 30 years, because we're at this pivot point. And I think it's very important that we realize that every movie we make now, whether it's a contemporary movie with contemporary characters or a movie that's set in the past, all of it is made in the context of climate breakdown. All of it. And we have very good science, and we know where it's going. And we know that every year is going to pretty much get wetter and have more drought. What does that mean for outdoor filming? You know, even like last year was our wettest every year. It's hard to film an outdoor sunny scene in the rain. And that's only going to these trends are only going to continue and get more difficult and more tricky and more risk as we go forward. So I guess the point is as well is that we can't take our eye off the ball as an industry, that when 75% of our of production is inward, right? So if people are coming here for the Irish scenery and the Irish sets that are outdoors, what does climate change mean for that, right? As it becomes more stormier, more wetter, more drought. And we need to start, I'm not saying I have an answer to it here, but what I'm saying is that we need to be doing that thinking now for a strategy for the Irish film industry today, so that when these realities are really hitting us 2030, 2035, we've got these solutions picked up and ready to go so that we can remain competitive. Because one of the things that's endemic in Ireland is that we don't do this future thinking, right? And we see it everywhere, right? In all of our society, we don't do this future thinking, and we really need to do that as a industry, right? And that's
couldn't agree more.
Okay, can we open to questions, John? Yeah.
Everyone in the room.
No, Kieran, that prompted a question, and that is, okay, the only way that we can do that, the only way we can measure where we're going is to have a baseline study on our carbon emissions.
Sure.
Right? And I know you're doing that in school. I mean, it's like everything else in this country. If we keep expanding, I remember when the EPA was set up, and it was great. But since then, we've had phenomenal economic growth. So on every, you meant, be it water quality, air quality, everything, we're going back, and carbon emissions going through the roof. So this is a hard question. How do we expand our industry and yet reduce our CO2 emissions? That's number one question.
Sure.
And I better put in the other questions as well.
There's a lot of
Out of breath.
The other
Your
questions,
one's first.
Two big ones. Streaming and artificial intelligence, right? We're going to have to build more data centers, and this is a real problem in this country. It's a real problem. So I'd like the panel, please, all of you, come in.
I have a lot to say on data
Please, where are we going with that? And artificial intelligence, which Bill Gates says has no limit.
Okay, Kieran.
Which one would I say first? What was the first question? I'll take that one first. It was where are we going?
As we're growing, how do we
oh man!
Yeah,
so
so
this is totally a Kieran opinion, right? No one else's, right? I think we really need to focus on what matters, what fundamentally matters in film in Ireland. It's about telling our stories, I think. And so what I'm trying to say is we need to look at making sustainable, looking at climate risk, sustainable Irish productions, because that is going to be the future, right? I think more and more filmmaking is going to move indoors due to climate impacts, right? And where you can recreate outside scenery without the risk of having to go outside and getting hit by a flood or hit by a drought, right? And I think that kind of external investment is going to become harder and harder to get, right? As filming outdoors becomes more costly. So I really think that we need to, the future is Irish filmmaking in Ireland, right? And so everything we do to support that industry and build up those skills and make that industry, close collaboration, I think, with close neighbours like the UK as well, I think is going to be the fundamental future of the Irish film industry. And that's a snapshot, right? Personal opinion. With data centers, right? Oh my God, right? And everyone knows here that data centers were massively out of whack with the rest of the world. The average data center uses about 2% of a country's electricity. We're at 21 going to 30, right? This is insane. We've been massively sold out in a big way, right? We also have to ask the question fundamentally, what is in these data centers? What is in these data centers, right? I'll tell you what the majority of it is. It's marketing information on ourselves that help us buy more products. That is the fundamental point of the data centers, right? What's another point of the data centers? if you okay, let's get economical here, okay? What's moving the stock market in the United States? It's about 5 or 6 companies, data companies, right? It's about 90% of growth over the last couple of years has come from your Googles, your Microsofts, etc., right? What are their biggest margins? It's on their cloud computing. They need these things to keep growing, so the entire stock market needs to keep growing. So what they're doing is they're embedding AI in everything, right? So that the energy requirement of just even doing a spell check, because the spell check is now AI, is so astronomically higher, right? Spell check even is getting 20, 30 times more energy intensive because it's moving from old AI to generative AI, right? So I'll cut it there, but just say we need to start really asking the question, what is in these data centers, right? And who is that serving? Because I think a lot of energy cuts can be made, right? And we have to, fundamentally, we have to live within our limits to growth, donut economics, right? We have to get into the donut and start changing the paradigm. It's not about economic growth anymore. It's about living within our means, living within our limits, and a well-being for all across society. Hopefully that answers all the questions. Bye, everybody.
Only there's a mic.
I'll just leave.
Bob Dylan said he's going to serve the devil of the Lord.
Yeah.
I can see the hands. Just quick plug, we're having 2 events next week on donut economics. If anyone wants to find out about them, ask me afterwards. One of them is a film screening. So yourself at the back. Yeah.
Just wanted to bring it back to community television there. Emma from Cork Community Television is her name. And I suppose just that I believe strongly, that we say, well, how can community TV address climate change? And I really think, by telling those local stories, it is fantastic some of the work that's being done in the film industry in Ireland. But I suppose coming more from the community television sector, I think people are interested to hear what's going on locally, and I think it's by people. There's brilliant initiatives happening all over the country, and I don't think we're hearing enough about them. It's great nationwide might do a little piece every now and then, and obviously ECO I was doing brilliant work when that was on there. But I think that we need to be more resourceful. We can express what's going
absolutely.
on.
Yeah, and I wanted to say actually just at the previous panel, every film or TV program, community or internationally funded, all struggles to find an audience now. It's such a saturated market. Like I said, we've had huge success with Mrs. Robinson in Ireland. We're struggling to get it out outside of Ireland, and it's been so successful here. And it's just like, social media can give us the chance to, work at the same RTE. Every program they're doing, it's trying to cut through, and it's really, really difficult at all level, regardless of money. So
I
think
that, but I suppose just one other thing on money, as you mentioned there, I'm not quite sure where it's going with the Albert calculator being passed up to Thomas Schumann, but one worry I would have then, because our budgets are very small, and if there's going to be certification required, and we won't have budgets necessarily to be able to bring in
100%.
sustainability officers and things like that. So I would have a worry that are we going to be asked then to obviously we want to do it, we want to be able to show that we're doing good practice and stuff like that. But if it's going to become onerous for us, then that could be an issue. And I suppose I just want to kind of sound that note of warning, whilst also saying that we really want to do it and be part of the whole thing.
Could I jump in there? Just because I've had this experience with multiple producers, and I firmly believe that it's not sustainability if you can't integrate it meaningfully into your budget. So I think, again, starting the conversation early, what do we need to do? What would we ideally like to do with this scenario? And then over time, once you become more familiar with the Albert calculator, and I've seen it across multiple individual producers working on loads of different projects, is that you're instinctually, like any other department or any other expense, that okay, on this kind of size project with this setup, I would need a full-time sustainability coordinator. I'd say for a project like the Dodder, you probably maybe a consult call, and the producer takes more on the voice of sustainability, or the face on the ground. So I do think you can 100% integrate Albert into the budget meaningfully without it becoming a complete extension and almost needing funding to be sustainable, because I just don't really think that's sustainable, if you know what I mean, at all. So yeah,
Maybe there needs to be a for-profit, not-for-profit distinction as well around some of this? I don't know.
Well, it's about doing the process. I mean, actually, because I said a film like that is so sustainable and energy efficient,
Yes.
you know, that it's, but yeah, actually it does take somebody to work their way through the process to get that certification.
Yes.
And I'd say it'll be a while. Just where Albert is at the moment, Commissioner Mann is planning to take it on from April, but not planning it to be further mandatory for at least the rest of next year.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of community programs, actually I'm not sure where that would fall into, but I doubt it'll be mandatory, but yeah.
Yeah, yourself.
Yeah, we love these conversations, so if you want to continue them, please think about joining DCTV. What I was going to say is just John's question about data centres kind of came from streaming. There's been a shift in television and other media that what used to come from an antenna went to a satellite dish has become your broadband. And what comes from your broadband comes from a data centre, and we know how expensive they are. They're talking about satellite delivery being gone in 10 years, and it's been phased out rapidly because when they can connect to your home and know what you watch and what minutes you spend your attention on, they can advertise and quantify with their AI on those systems. When you get it from a satellite or from an antenna or from Serview, they haven't a clue that you're entitled to watch something without being tracked. But the new ways are tracking it all the time at great expense to the environment due to the data centres. So, and the consumer will just receive a box and it's like Sky Stream and it's Vodafone this and it's Virgin that, but it's not coming, you know, without the added kind of cost of the data centre.
Yeah, absolutely. And data centers are pretty much a monopoly, right? As well, Microsoft, Google, etc. The OpenAI, all these guys. Like it's about 3 or 4 building all the world's data centers. They have a monopoly. They can charge, a lot. And as with any kind of tech subscription you get, right, it starts off kind of cheap. You migrate to that service, and then the price keeps going up and up and up, right? And clearly, we need a non-monopoly alternative. We know we need a community version of that. We're keeping the data just that we require, that's beneficial to ourselves and to society, on those servers. And we need to break. I think that's my only point I can add there is we need to break this monopoly on data centers and build our own alternatives, community alternatives, that serve the purposes of us.
Okay.
And delete more.
And absolutely. And delete more. Or don't create.
I think you're so right. One comment on that. Like we as far as fact is the latest book on digital serfdom.
Yes. Yeah.
So my name's Aidan. I'm a landscape architect. I'm also a member of Rewilding Wicklow with Danny. So I was delighted to hear you saying that and scaling up. So when I hear scaling up nature-based solutions as a landscape architect, we need to scale up. So if you're funding organisations like Rewilding Wicklow, they are operating at scale in terms of installations.
Exactly.
And, so consider more of that because
it's being strategic as well by what you're funding.
Exactly.
You know, what are the what's the domino effect?
And one final thing, if I may, in terms of business and corporate responsibility, in terms of biodiversity and climate change, there's a European network which has an annual, I don't know if you're aware of it. I didn't see any Irish voices in there the last time I checked. I was in their Zoom meeting about a year ago. So there's a European network at a bureau for biodiversity. Check it out.
Yeah, definitely.
Just 2 more, if that's okay. Yourself at the back.
Yeah, not to like completely turn the conversation back to data centers. One thing.
Gets everyone going.
Sorry, I've forgotten your name from
Kieran.
Kieran, hello.
We have a huge industry in animation, and that's something that, aside from outdoor shoots and things here, for scenery, our animations world renowned.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's even getting a lot of work coming from the BBC for some of their shows as well that are tax initiatives. That takes a lot of compute power, and that's only going to grow. Do you have any thoughts on how we're going to manage that animation demand?
I mean, it's same as all demand, right? So first of all, I think we should be using data centers for what benefits people, right? And I can tell you straight away, we could chop their energy usage by like 90%, right? If we're using it for community needs. Then we need to decide as a community what energy we have available and what we want to use it for, right? And I'm sure, you know, telling stories, which is fundamental to the human experience, is going to be one of them, you know? So I guess to give a short answer to a great question is that I think we need to be getting to a point where we have these community-owned assets, and then we're having conversations about we have X amount of energy, where's Y to spend, where do we want to put it? And as I say, I'm sure telling stories is going to be a fundamental part of that. So I think the answer to your question is we need to kind of, oh God, terrible phrase, we need to take back control. But you know, we first fundamentally we need to be the ones deciding where this energy is used. It's our energy, right? Not theirs. And then we need to say, right, how much we got for animation? That's the direction that we need to go, you know.
I think I know there's a few answers, but I think it was yours. That was the second.
Sorry, I have a couple of questions. I'm going to think which one to ask. I'm just wondering.
Just one.
Okay. Yeah, no, sir. Quickly picking out which one to ask. With the calculator, does it cover things like building the set? I'm just hearing about the building.
Yeah.
I would have to bring the outside inside. I just imagine all the timber and materials.
Yeah.
It does.
Encompass all that.
Timber, filming, all that. Where actually it's not so good at is animation, post-production, and that kind of detail, storage. I know someone's talked about how many copies of HD rushes they have, and it used to be 2, and people generally then go, let's 3 to be sure, and now it's like, oh, let's have 4 or 5 copies to be really sure we don't lose it. And are they deleted at the end, you know? But yeah, sets, travel, generators, costumes, and again, it's quite drama focused because it started at EastEnders in the UK. It's you have to adapt it a bit for documentaries and adapt it a bit more for animation. So it's a tool, a useful tool, but it's not a silver bullet.
John, you'll have to tell me. I'm not.
Hope. Yeah.
Oh, hope.
Kieran.
Hope. Yeah. Well, here's the hope. I think, you know, so many of the solutions to the crisis we're in are win-wins. They're better, right? Battery technology, you know, at scale, it's more environmentally friendly. It's quieter. It's win-win. It's the food. It's healthier food. It's cheaper food. You live longer. Your crew don't, you know, live longer. Yeah. It's win-win. And this is across the board in industry, right? So much of this is win-win. So much of this is actually giving ourselves more power at community level to decide, actually, we have X amount of resources. Here's what we're going to use them in. Across the board, whatever industry you go to, almost, it's the benefits are for us living in better, more sustainable societies, right? Happier, healthier, more community. Less time working, more time with our children, with our families. You know, it's just that's the hope. Is that why I think we'll get there? Is I think we can tell an incredibly compelling and convincing story about why this leads us to a much better life and a much better place for all of us. And we need to, you know, see these stories told. I saw one person said to me the other day, God, I'd love a climate rom-com where 2 people meet at like a planning meeting, you know, like that's where we need to get to on this stuff, you know, like they fall in love at, you know, at the daughter meeting or something like that, and it's like the Notting Hill equivalent, you know, but like
then you get all the young
that's
kids.
what we need, you know, like and for young and for old,
It's
but
actually
it's
happened,
better.
It has happened. We've had
There you go.
romance across the
There you go. There you go.
across the barricades, but on the south side.
I'm just going to say right now, Screen Ireland will fund that script. I'm going to go there, but there is the hope. There is the hope. It's the better world awaits.
Somewhere, you know, it's not time to spend talking to people.
Yeah, absolutely. You know.
Okay, thank you, fellows.
So, can I thank very much? That was a wonderful panel and great insights. Thank you all very much indeed. I actually met my wife on a demonstration, so
There you go.
But so I want to acknowledge as well Bernadine Carher. Bernadine from Mind the Gap very generously gave up her place here because I had screwed up slightly. So thank you, Bernadine. I want to thank everybody involved. Kevin, thank you for facilitating us here. It was great to see the facilities, you know, really fantastic. And I hope it's the start of further cooperation between the organisations. I want to thank all of the speakers and the panelists here. We had great sessions this morning. And I want to particularly acknowledge the board of DCTV and Brian Green, our CEO, and who has done great work. And I've been told by Kieran to mention again, because we have a number of community groups here, It's open for you to get involved in DCTV. We'd love to see you there getting involved, even in the smallest way. If you have your iPhone footage or whatever you want to do, whatever you want to promote, we're here to listen to what you have. And I just want to say that we will have a video of today's proceedings that will be up on the Green Foundation site, will be also on DCTV later on. And we will have, and he's a great man for the written reports, Pat Brereton does brilliant written reports, he's going to have that as well. So, by the way, if anybody has taken photographs here today, yeah, if you would give them please to Anne here, info at Green Foundation Ireland, she'd like to see, and we would credit you in the photographs as well. Same, it will probably go up on the DCTV side as well. And I want to acknowledge as well, because Anne has taken the Anne Conran has taken the registration here today. Thank you, Anne, for all your work. If anybody wants to donate to Green Foundation Ireland, because what Green Foundation Ireland does is promote a lot of these films, and she said there's a few that need to be mentioned here. Next one is on the 4th of November. There's a film show called Wilding, and it's on the Solstice Arts Centre up in Railway Street, Navan, County Meath. And again, it's an opportunity for people to talk about these issues and get a conversation going. That's very important. Monday, the 11th of November 2024 is a hybrid seminar, the Irish Sea Ecological, Socio-Cultural and Economic Insights. That's quite a title, yeah. So again, you can look those up on the website. So finally, again, thank you very much. It's been quite a productive day, and we look forward to further engagement. And thank you, Duncan, for the previous panel as well. I look forward now to further engagement and further discussion, and growing DCTV into the future, because we feel now that we've turned a corner a little bit, and that community television has a huge role to play in the future of this country. So thank you very
much. Shoulder of a generation. I know, yeah.
You guys are all good, because I see a few people here who want to talk to you.
Say again?
Alex. Alex.